Okay, so if people were curious, I wanted to do a topic about Adventism or Seventh day Adventist church traditions surrounding media. So I would say overall in the Adventist church, things have definitely changed. I've talked about that multiple times. But the Adventist church is different from a lot of religions and Christian denominations because there are other religions and Christian denominations that do the Sabbath. Like, the Sabbath is not original to Adventism, it actually comes from Judaism, but it usually from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, Adventist people have a shift in kind of activities and media specifically and other activities. So, I mean, there's a difference between Adventists who live a really strict lifestyle. Like, there are strict people who maybe, based on their own beliefs, don't listen to secular radio. Now, they might listen to the Fish Christian radio. They might not have television, or if they do, they might watch like sports, maybe Disney Channel, National Geographic, maybe History Channel. I mean, I don't really know. Some of these channels, I think nowadays things have changed a lot to where I'm not sure where Adventists would really stand on even having having those on the television if they were really strict. I mean, but it ranges from people not having televisions at all or listening to secular radio at all. But maybe they'll listen to sports radio. Maybe they'll listen to the news. I know that in the religion, a lot of times people aren't necessarily, like, traditionally, people weren't usually taught to be political. Like, I remember once, I was younger. I was like in college. Like, I remember the pastor used to go to college, to our college, on a certain day of the week. Let's say it was Wednesday afternoons. I don't remember. And he'd get us all Del Taco. We went to El Camino College. We'd have like maybe Del Taco and a little. He'd buy us all Del Taco, and we'd have maybe like a Bible study and eat and talk about scripture. I don't remember if we read the Bible or if we just had like a topic, and we'd eat and pray and then go back to class. But it was like during a time where a lot of us didn't have class, so there were usually like 3 or 4 of us who didn't really have class. We had like a break. Sometimes you'd have like these 2-3 hour breaks between classes, and then he would come and meet up with us. And there was another guy who was near our age, but I don't think he was in college, but he had that time off too, so he would come join. He was another person at the church that we went to church with. He was another person our age. Like, we were like in our 20s, probably like 20 years old or something. And the pastor would come. And so I remember one thing that was kind of funny was that the pastor used to do these long prayers. And so we'd finish eating and we'd be like, okay, we're about to go to class. And then he'd pray, and the prayer would be so long that we'd be like rushing to get to class on time because he would pray so long. And we were always like, oh my goodness, he like takes forever and we're gonna be late for class. And so I remember sometimes just like because you know how college campuses are. It's not like everything's right next to each other. And this Del Taco was like across a busy street. It was like on the other side of Crenshaw, so it was kind of like a wide street, and the light was long, and you'd have to like wait for the light, and then you'd have to walk all the way to where you needed to be on campus, and it was really kind of like his prayers were really long. But he would get us lunch, and we would just eat. I remember getting a Macho Grande burrito almost every single time. He was vegetarian, so we got like the 8-layer burrito. I think it was called Veggie Works back then. I don't know. And I don't remember what everybody else got, but I remember just enjoying the food. And yeah, he'd get us Del Taco. I think the church office back then was like, I don't know if it still is, but it used to be across the street in Torrance. It used to be across the street from the Del Taco. I think that's the only Del Taco in Torrance. There was another Del Taco in, I think it was technically in Lomita. I think that one's closed. I think it's closed down this year in 2026. But yeah. So yeah, there aren't really a whole lot of Del Tacos around, but I remember liking Del Taco. I still kind of do. But yeah. Why did I mention that? Oh yeah, I guess like schedule wise and stuff, like what people would do. So like certain people would be really strict for their lifestyle, and they weren't really open to having media, like any kind of media, too much. So I know in his car, I never remember listening to the radio. I don't know if he listens to the radio. Oh, I was mentioning political stuff, that's why. I remember once my dad mentioned something about freedom fries, like, because I guess some, leader in the U.S. was like mad at the French or something, saying that we're no longer going to call these French fries, we're going to call them freedom fries. And I think I got French fries at Del Taco, and then I remember mentioning like, oh, aren't these called like freedom fries or something like that? And then that pastor was like, no political talk. And I was kind of like, oh, I didn't even know it was like political talk. Like, I didn't even know. I was just like, oh, I just heard my dad say it. Like, I didn't even know what he was talking about. Like, I didn't really know that was considered like political talk, but he kind of like mentioned like, don't talk about politics kind of stuff. But that was like back then, and so I don't really know now how it goes, because everybody talks about politics so much. And I've tuned into some occasional services, not really the ones with that pastor, but some other ones, like Hollywood SDA Church, and the California one, not the Florida one. But that church is pretty open-minded. They have LGBT members. They let everybody serve. They let trans people serve. They let trans people, go on the stage and like speak, and I don't know, like maybe they hold like positions like in the church and stuff. Like, they're not prejudiced against people holding roles and like volunteering in the church. So I'll tune in on occasion to services if I'm like in the mood to listen to them. I might not really be in the mood to listen to the one that is that week. But if it's a sermon that I want to hear a topic on, or I'm just in the mood to like listen to something, or I want to hear the music or something, I might tune in. I might not, but I might tune in. And so, yeah, I don't really know. I don't really know if Adventists really listen to the news too much, technically. I'm gonna say if somebody's really strict, they're probably not listening to it, but I doubt. I'm gonna go and say that nowadays people like there has been a lot of shift in like what Adventists do compared to when I grew up versus to what they do now. There's been a shift in food. There's been a shift in kind of like community interaction. There's been a shift in yeah, like I said, like politics. There's been a shift in mission work as far as I've noticed. Maybe I'm wrong saying that, but it seems like it. But maybe just because I'm a different generation now and I don't know of people who are like going on missions. But yeah, I would say what the shift looks like in food. I have heard of people talking more about veganism, whereas before it was vegetarianism. But it's not just veganism and vegetarianism, it's also like, you know, having like professionals come in and like talk about different types of food benefits, you know, having doctors and nurses and dietitians actually like speaking and not just reading like what this person or that person said about pork or bacon or whatever, or tea or coffee. Like, it's not like Ellen G. White based necessarily. For people who don't know, a lot of Adventists believe that Ellen G. White was a prophet, and had a lot of writings. There's some debate if she wrote it or her husband wrote it, who knows, but I don't know, I don't really think it matters too much who wrote what, but some people might. But there's a belief that her writings are like some type of like devotionals from God, something along those lines. Like, people don't uphold it as like equal to the Bible, but they follow it somewhat, like especially with a lot of the traditions. But yeah, so yeah, some of the stuff you see with community, like I've seen churches doing more stuff for the like with the community, like they have health lessons like once a month at the church, where it's not just the church, it's like people are invited to come from the community to like listen to a lecture about health, and then they usually serve like some kind of healthy meal afterwards. Or maybe it's like a cooking class and people are welcome to learn how to cook like a certain vegan dish or vegetarian dish. I think now though it has shifted towards veganism too. But yeah, I'm seeing more like medical professionals' advice being sought more often than what I remember growing up. There are like communities, like I remember one church I went to where they had communities. There was like a fair, I don't know what it was called. It was like I don't know if it was like a block party or some kind of like community day where they'd have a lot of booths, maybe a stage with like, I think the church would sing a couple praise songs, but then the stage had other like performances, like certain like maybe school clubs would do dances, or like maybe the firefighters would talk and the police officers would talk, and they'd have like awards that they'd talk about, or maybe the mayor would come or something. I don't really know how big it was, But then with the Adventists, people would volunteer for like health related screenings, so they would provide like free dental screenings or free blood pressure readings, or give people free like health pamphlets, or this was like, it wasn't a church event, it was like a community event where Adventists who care about health, the health message was what they call it, they would take the health message and kind of apply it, and have nurses and dentists and doctors and different people come and either talk about services that people could get for free, or offer some kind of free exam of some kind. I think legally they were able to do it. I don't really know what all it was. I don't remember all the details. This was like 15 years ago. I don't know if they still do it now. And then, like I was mentioning, with like missions, I know my generation, some people went on missions. I don't know how many generations younger than mine, at least the churches I went to, I don't know how many people I heard of going either on group missions as like, because we used to do it from 8th grade to 10th grade. Our school went up to 10th grade, but I think that same school now only goes up to 8th grade. And then what else? Like, yeah, I've seen media change. I've talked about that like multiple times, but yeah, the strictest people, I would say, probably don't listen to mainstream radio outside of the radio that has sermons and the radio that maybe has sports. That might be the most secular that they might listen to. So if it has sermons and it has like Christian music, maybe classical, maybe jazz, yeah, because I had a pastor who was like super into jazz. But yeah, once you start getting into rock music and rap music and pop music and country music even, probably, they might accept country music maybe a little bit more, maybe, but maybe not. But the strictest people would probably stick to the Christian stuff. I don't really know how they would feel about other religions. They seem to feel a little intimidated by other religions. Like, they don't really tend to value studying it too much. Like, they always think someone's going to get confused and leave. I think there was a pastor that got excommunicated for teaching other religions. I know when we had a youth or collegiate pastor who got different cultures and religions to come in and talk to us about their beliefs. Some of the parents complained that they don't want their kids getting confused if there's like a Jew coming in and a Muslim coming in and like all these different people coming in one at a time. They didn't want that. So that was back then. Like, I don't know how it even looks now. I don't know how active their youth groups are now. I don't know how active their Vespers groups are anymore. There's a lot of stuff that people just don't go to anymore. They have church online. I mean, they have church in person too, but the services are live streamed. Some of them are even archived. That was not really a thing when I was younger. I think it might have been live streamed at one of the churches at a certain point. When I was still going there, but I was never watching it because I was there all the time. There's usually stuff to do during the weeks, Like there's usually like some kind of like at least a Bible study or some kind of like knitting group or men's group or women's group. They usually do vacation Bible school every summer for like a month or something. Maybe 1 week. They invite all the kids to come Monday through Friday or something. And it could be kids from the community, and they get people to play music, and somebody's going to preach. And they probably have like games and crafts and snacks and food and stuff. As far as music, some people have issues with maybe electric guitars with amps or bass guitars with amps. Maybe like synth keyboards, drum machines, that kind of thing. Or drums in general. Or like electric drums. Usually the people who don't like the drums aren't going to like probably any of the other stuff either. Or you could just play without distortion. People might be okay with that. If you just play strumming and you're not really playing like riffs or anything, if you're just playing like rhythm on electric guitar without any effects, and if you're maybe playing drums like a little bit, but there's certain beats that some people traditionally believe aren't like holy enough because it makes you want to dance. So usually the beats that are like in hymns are not usually considered evil. I put that in quotes because I don't really think that's a thing. That's my opinion, but I don't really see anything wrong with dancing. I don't see anything wrong with like getting pumped up by the music and expressing yourself and getting kind of moved by the music. I don't really see a problem with it, but I was kind of raised to think that dancing is wrong, but I don't agree that it is, but whatever, it's a conversation for a whole other time. But even within the church, even if you're playing church music, the strictest people will probably still think that the music is, there's a holier version of the music, and for some reason hymns with an organ or a piano that's not an electric piano are seen as more holy, even though the history of hymns is not necessarily, I mean, they're from like tavern songs. So I don't know how that is considered more holy, but it is kind of more traditional. I don't really know the stance on gospel music. Overall, I would say the community I was raised around did not necessarily value black culture all that much. They would probably say that they don't value it. But if you were a black person growing up in that community, you would know that that was the case. I don't think I've ever heard anybody do rapping in church. They didn't really. Sometimes there would be different church groups that would come and do music, and it would be gospel style music, or there'd be like a special music that somebody would sing that would be gospel style music. They wouldn't like stop people from singing it, but the type of music they would tend to play would be either usually contemporary Christian music, and if not contemporary Christian, kind of like rock, soft rock, acoustic rock, it would usually be like hymns, or like a version of hymns that's kind of like a little more, contemporary sounding, like contemporary hymns, but still like the words would still be the hymns, but it might not be with like an organ or a piano only or something. I I don't know if people had an issue with wind instruments and brass and that kind of stuff. It was more rare. It wasn't really a thing, but I know the pastor played trombone. I knew some people played saxophone. There were a lot of musicians, and so it would just kind of depend. And I know there were some musicians that, like, during, during the offering or something, would play songs like "Stir It Up" by Bob Marley, and like they would just be jamming on songs sometimes that weren't even like church songs, at all. But they were just playing something, you know, without the singing, just like background music. And every now and then I'd catch them playing something that wasn't even like a church song, and so it was kind of funny. But that was like a younger group. It wasn't my group. Like, my group was younger than these people, but these guys were like a little older than my group. Some of them were like teachers and stuff, and so it was kind of funny though. But there were a lot of musicians. But I mean, there are Adventist churches that do have gospel music, but just the one that I went to did not really value a lot of African American culture type of stuff. In the school, they said guys couldn't have long hair, guys couldn't have braids, things like that. They considered it an extreme hairstyle. I don't know what their stance was on afros, but culturally, it's not uncommon for black males to have braids or sometimes long hair. Different cultures have long hair sometimes. Like, I don't think it's bad, but and this is like back in the day, so I don't know. This may have probably changed by now, but I'm just speaking to like my experience when I was still a part of all of it, like very active, and I have seen a lot of stuff change, so I don't really know. Food wise, things have changed. Usually churches weren't serving meat ever. I went to a church that would barbecue and stuff like that, like actual meat, not like barbecue vegetables, but they would barbecue like actual meat, like steak, chicken. I don't think I ever saw pork or shrimp or anything like that, like the meats that weren't like allowed. But there were some churches that later on started serving meat. If it was like, it was usually no, people would bring like buckets of chicken and stuff like that after church at this church. But it was more like an more ethnically diverse church, kind of more younger crowd, college, and people graduated from college, young professionals, a lot of black people, a lot of Tongans, a lot of Latinos. So when you start getting into the different cultures, the food kind of changes. I went to a church in San Diego that there was an American church and a Korean church on the same property, and the Korean church almost always did the food. So we were eating like kimchi, like bibimbap style, like food. There'd be like kimbap and like different style food. I don't remember seeing meat, but there'd be a lot of like Korean food. But a lot of times there were potlucks, and people would kind of bring stuff or make stuff at home and bring it, and then there'd be a team of people on potluck day that would heat stuff up. I went to a church that had potluck every Saturday. It got to a point where it was during like the economy crash in 2008 or so. People didn't have jobs, people didn't have extra money to like bring food to church, and a lot of people were coming to the South Bay area of LA from like the IE, and they didn't really have a lot of money to be bringing a lot of food. Like, it was like people in college, everybody was kind of struggling. So the church would like pitch in and get like Subways or pizza, or like go to Ralph's and get like chicken wings and like the stuff you get at Ralph's. But there were some days, I think, where there wasn't any potluck. I remember sometimes my mom would make a big pot of lentil soup and homemade bread for like Vespers, and she'd make vegan stuff so that the vegan people could eat vegan. There wouldn't be eggs in the bread and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, but the food has kind of changed a little bit. You do see a little bit more meat, but then you also see a lot more lessons about like veganism in addition to vegetarianism. There's a store called the Adventist Bookstore, ABC store. And there's also like an ABC truck. I think they're closing down, or maybe it's just Loma Linda brands are closing down. They have Loma Linda Big Franks and Loma Linda Fried Chick and all these kind of brands. Um, I think that company is shutting down as of 2026 or 2025. I don't know if ABC is staying open or not, but they mostly sold that food and then like really weird books. Um, I think in San Diego there's one in National City. In LA there's one in Glendale. I don't know if there are others around the South Bay areas or around the Southern California areas. Um, yeah, and then yeah, so that's kind of what I've noticed. Um, so someone who is Adventist but they're not super strict, that really kind of varies. I guess with the super strict people, I would probably say too, they're not going to bars, they're not going to clubs. Even if it's like salsa night, like salsa dancing, something that's not just like even like a typical like American club, they probably wouldn't do that. I mean, bonfires are probably gonna be okay. It's not uncommon for people to do like park picnics and bonfires and bring an acoustic guitar and everybody singing along. Usually to like church music. And sometimes they have like printouts. That's common, especially during summer. Or like having church picnics where there's like arranged games and stuff. I've known a lot of like men's groups that do like basketball on Sunday mornings at certain parks, or I guess it was technically a women's group. It was called like, I don't know if it was called Busy Bees or something like that, where they would knit things for like needy people. Like they would knit blankets maybe, or scarves, or some specific thing. All these women would get together and knit. They used to have like a prayer meeting once or twice a week at the church or at somebody's house. It's not uncommon for them to have Bible studies at somebody's house or at a church once or twice a week. So there's a lot of like activities you can do that are already pre-planned, that are out there that you can come or go as you please, and you wouldn't have to go every week. But if you were super strict and you weren't doing a lot of other stuff, you'd still have church people to hang out with to do various church related activities during the week. I don't know anybody who did everything, but when I was going to church a lot, I was pretty involved in a lot of stuff that would happen during the week, or there were always like volunteer opportunities. Like if somebody was moving, you could just come help people move. It wasn't like every week, but like you could just be part of a team that just like volunteers. Like a lot of us in our teens and 20s, college, would just, once we had cars and stuff, we would do a lot of volunteering. Certain people needed their offices cleaned out, and we would just come and like clean everything out, move the furniture to a moving van or something. Move like appliances. We would do a lot of volunteer work. Like we stayed pretty busy during the week. Like if the church needed cleaning, I remember one group, they needed to upholster the pews, and there was a group that was a part of upholstering the pews, or they would like put in new carpet every, not often, but once or twice or something, or help building like a new part of the step for the stage if something's like breaking, or help clean out a library room or something, and like organize the food bank. I have a friend that does like food bank and like you know, volunteering to do food bank and volunteering at church, or during the week to do like a food bank, giving out the numbers, you know, putting the labels on certain stuff, making sure people get the right amounts of food, checking people in, you know. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's going on that if you're pretty strict, you really don't have to worry with, yeah, you can be strict and not worry about being bored. Like, if you're involved in the church, you wouldn't be just like sitting around your house all day, just like bored out of your mind. You'd have plenty of social and volunteer and productive and learning and social types of activities you could do, like cooking classes and reading study classes, or you could have opportunities to be teaching and leading different groups. You could be in the leadership part of it, or you could just attend. Because some of these groups had like leaders that would like rotate. You could be like a leader of the youth group or something like that, or an assistant leader, or you could host at your house, just like open your doors to let people have a Bible study in your backyard once a week or something. Like, I don't know, you could host stuff and maybe join it too if you're hosting, but you're just opening your house to people. Maybe the church provides food and somebody else brings the food. And maybe you're having like chow mein and chicken wings and hosting the Bible study. Maybe you're not teaching the Bible study, but your house is available for people to come do it on a certain day, certain time of the week or whatever. I don't know. Like, there's a lot, if you're strict, that you could still do. But yeah, if you're not strict, it really varies. Because I would say, okay, the church in general probably wouldn't approve of smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, having cannabis products, having any kind of psychedelics or nicotine or any kind of vaping and stuff like that. Probably wouldn't be recommended or like promoted. Caffeine is one of those things that's like, it kind of depends how strict you are. Caffeine can be kind of I don't know, because I know a lot of people who consume caffeine or chocolate, and then I know a lot of people who aren't maybe into coffee or don't drink Coca-Cola. There's some decisions that aren't really like traditionally Adventists don't really drink caffeine, but I've also been to churches that in the mornings would, to get people to church on time, they would provide coffee and donuts. And sometimes it might be like a decaf coffee and a caffeinated coffee, or they'd have something like hot chocolate as well, or they'd have tea options as well. Some would be herbal tea, some would be like caffeinated black tea, caffeinated green tea, or decaf. They usually have caffeine and decaf available. I don't know if I knew that many people who didn't consume caffeine. A lot of people did. Even if they were like vegan or vegetarian, I knew a lot of people who drank coffee. Coffee's a pretty big one. Coffee, or at least tea, if not coffee. I think it's very rare for people not to drink caffeine. I know plenty of people who don't drink or smoke. Like, it's not very common for people to be drinking. I don't know, maybe it is common, but most of the people I was hanging out with weren't regularly drinking. There were people that I knew. I think culturally, maybe I should be cautious saying this, but culturally, I maybe knew more Latino families that drank more, but it was usually like they're in their 20s and they're doing it at home, and they would hang out on the weekends with their families, and there would always be like a backyard kind of with some tables and some music and some food. Friends could come over and there would be like beer and people would like dance and drink, but it was like in their household, like it was like on weekends at their house. And I remember going to those parties often, and I wasn't drinking at that time at all, but at this point, I wouldn't say that I never drink at this point, but um, back then I wasn't really drinking. Like I tried alcohol, but I don't think I started drinking hardly like regularly at all till I was maybe like 30, maybe like 29, 30. Like I was like in San Diego. I wasn't really drinking when I lived in LA. Like San Diego was easier to be drinking because it's easier to get around certain areas, and I knew a lot of people who drank. I knew a lot of military veterans. I knew a lot of people working in psychology. People in psychology drink a lot. People who are in certain fields drink a lot. So, I just, at least like wine and stuff like that. Like I was around alcohol more. And, at one point I was like using cider, like drinking ciders to like Angry Orchard and stuff to like fall asleep, like before I like knew about melatonin. I'm not saying it helped, but it did help me sleep, but I don't think it was like beneficial. But yeah, I think I learned on my own that that wasn't really the best choice. But yeah, like we were usually told, alcohol, like even if you weren't strict, you probably weren't drinking that much, and if you were, it was very moderate. A lot of people, even if you weren't strict, you probably weren't going to bars and clubs a lot in your 20s. In college, like a lot of people who maybe weren't even strict were still going to like Adventist colleges and universities back in my day. Like my generation was one of the first generations, like during the economy crash, to not really go to those Adventist schools because they cost more than Harvard at that time. Like they were really expensive schools. I don't know the prices of the schools now, but they cost a whole lot of money, so people weren't really going. And we would go to like public schools more, like community college, and then transfer to like UCs or Cal States. That was pretty common, and those schools were more affordable, and they probably had a better reputation. Like within the church, people didn't look at it as having as good of a reputation. Like people would probably say Loma Linda and PUC were better than like UCLA and Cal State LA, but in society, I don't think people really technically would see it that way. But you were kind of more valued. There was still like a judgment of like if you went to public school for high school, or if you went to non like Adventist like universities or colleges, you weren't really seen as like holy enough or connected enough, or you were maybe like looked at as like, oh, like they might be doing the wrong thing or hanging out with the wrong crowd. And especially if you didn't go to church and you were going to those different secular schools, then you were kind of like, people would kind of like wonder what you're up to on the weekends if you weren't there a lot. As far as like working on the Sabbath or studying on the Sabbath, I didn't used to study on the Sabbath, but I guess I learned later on that some people did, which was something I didn't know. I think I started studying on the Sabbath during grad school. I think I usually wasn't studying on the Sabbath. Like, I would feel pretty guilty about it. I don't really remember if I was or not. During like high school, college, I really don't fully remember doing that. I would usually take the time off, and I would usually be at church. I think so. Yeah, and I think maybe my first year of grad school. I don't know if it was a year, maybe a year and a half. I think I started going to like a Messianic Jewish church. And then after that, I think I started going to a 3 p.m. Adventist church. I don't really remember the timeline, but I feel like that's what it was, because then I remember from that church I moved to San Diego. I don't know, maybe I was going to both churches. I really don't remember. But yeah, I do remember. No, because I think I was going to San Diego. I was going to the 3 p.m. Adventist church before I went to San Diego. And I think right before I started grad school, I was going to the Messianic Jewish church, because I remember I started feeling super swamped, and then I just didn't go to that church anymore. But I can't remember if it was my grad school in LA or when I moved to San Diego when I started studying on the Sabbath. I know for sure in San Diego I would study on the Sabbath, because I remember being in the library and I wasn't even going to church hardly at all then. But when I was still at Cal State LA, I think I still went to church. I still remember going to church, yeah. And even when I first moved to San Diego, like my first year, I would still come back, like the first year, and go to church. My social life was still in LA, so I would still come back on weekends, and then I just decided not to. It was just too much. I started meeting people in San Diego, and I tried to go to church in San Diego, I think, when I stopped driving up to LA every weekend, and I wasn't really into it. It was kind of old school. I wasn't really involved, like I didn't have any like roles or anything. Like it was good, the food was good, they would read the quarterlies for the Sabbath school lessons. I wasn't used to that. I was used to like more like free flowing conversations of like topics that were kind of more intriguing to discuss. The quarterlies, even though I read them on occasion, they are dry to me. I think they're like not the most thought provoking thing. And when you've gone to a church your whole life, you kind of know what they say already. Like it's not, and I don't know. I don't want to like bash the. You can read it at sabbath.school. That's the website for the Adventist Quarterlies. It also has Ellen G. White writings in it. Those are a little more thought-provoking in my opinion than the actual quarterly daily lessons themselves. Those are pretty like basic and dry in my opinion, and not, they kind of just like tell you what to think. I'm not really so into that. Like part of me likes easy stuff, and then another part of me is like, I like complexity too. So it might just depend on the mood, but yeah, but I would say overall that's kind of how a person's lifestyle might look if they weren't very strict. They would probably, um, there was probably still a lot of traditions. There, they'd probably still go to church. They probably would still possibly not eat the things that aren't traditional to eat. They might eat meat, but they might not eat pork or shellfish or certain types of meats. They might drink tea and coffee. I don't really think that one is really a traditional thing, like really a strict versus non-strict thing. And there's not really a distinguishing, like people don't really call themselves like a certain term if you're more strict versus if you're not. Like you're not called like a certain word. You just kind of do what you're gonna do. Clothing wise, I would say there's probably not that much of a difference. I would say the stricter people maybe would wear more, like you would probably almost never see a short skirt or low cut blouse on a really strict person. As far as guys' clothing styles, I don't know what you would see. And women are allowed to wear pants, but I guess if someone's really strict what they wear at church, you might see more so what they wear at church. A guy might wear like a suit and tie, versus like maybe like a polo shirt and like jeans, or like a polo shirt and like slacks. Or if you might just wear like shorts and a t-shirt to church. Like some of the churches aren't really that strict with dress codes. I've never known any that were, but sometimes you were expected to dress a certain way. Like you kind of knew what you were supposed to wear, but I mean, back in my time, I did hear about people getting reprimanded or like maybe like told to leave or told to change, or they were given something else to wear because of what they came to church wearing or came to any kind of church function wearing. But I've never, like usually the rule was like skirts weren't supposed to be more than like 2 to 3 inches above your knee. Anything shorter than that is too short. At the beach, you're probably not wearing like a 2-piece bikini. You're probably wearing a 1-piece bathing suit. I mean, I don't know what the difference really is. Guys could wear swim trunks with no t-shirt. That wasn't really like considered an issue. Maybe wearing a lot of makeup. If you're strict, you're not gonna wear makeup or jewelry. If you're not strict, you might. But there are people who just mix and match different stuff. Like some people maybe do part of things and don't do the other parts. And then like your home style, like your home life is still different than like a typical Western American lifestyle. Like I said, some people don't have TVs or don't listen like to secular radio or whatever in the car when they're driving or whatever, or they don't buy music that's like secular, like CDs or Spotify or whatever. They're not listening to stuff. Now there's some gray areas that I don't really know, because I don't really know how things look for strict versus non-strict people when it comes to social media. Because I've seen a lot of people that I grew up with that I would say they're strict, but on Facebook when you see what they post, they don't seem that strict. Like they can kind of start arguments and say a bunch of like really insensitive things. I've noticed that more. I mean, I'm not saying it's always been an issue, but I think it's becoming an issue, or it has become an issue more now than what I noticed in the past. And as far as what people consume on like smartphones, now that there's like privacy with it. I don't really know what people are actually watching. Because back in the day, you would kind of know what people watched when they would talk about TV shows or whatever. And then you would kind of hear, oh, like, did you watch the OC? And some people are like, oh, I don't watch that. Or like, you know, or certain people didn't even have TVs or whatever. Like, now it's like people are watching whatever they're watching on their phones and nobody's really discussing it. People aren't really going out to movies as much, so you don't really know what movies people are seeing. I don't know how people feel about like subscriptions to like Netflix and Hulu and all that kind of stuff, because you just have like every single thing at your fingertips to just watch it. I don't know if those apps you can really just like, I guess you could probably have like a kid's account or filter certain stuff, but it's like certain apps that once you have the app, you still have access to everything. I don't know how things look for younger people with parental controls on like laptops, tablets, cell phones. Like younger people have them now. My generation, when you were younger, you didn't really have that stuff. You'd maybe have a Walkman, and you could like listen to what you wanted on your Walkman or your Discman, and nobody would really know. And we would maybe trade CDs and tapes and mixtapes around, or movies and DVDs and that kind of stuff. We would maybe trade them around. There wasn't so much. You could just go on some even like free random pirate website and just put something on your phone or computer and just like stream it for free. Like nowadays, I really don't know what the difference is between strict and not strict people, and how they're kind of like doing things or not doing things. I know what I see because I'm not even really paying attention, but I know what I see is in the Adventist world these days. I feel like, and it's not only the strict people, but the strict people do seem to be very vocal on social media, especially on Facebook. Just kind of a little out of control on there. And there's a lot of arguing on Facebook between everybody. I'm not just gonna blame it on the strict people, but there's a lot of arguing and tension and hatred and people saying prejudice and rude things to people because of political reasons. A lot of that. I don't tune into enough sermons to know really politically how people are like talking about stuff, but I know that there are sermons or church services where somebody gets up on the stage with a mic and might mention something political related, and there are sermons where people kind of are discussing maybe how to like deal with the challenges of policies and political climate, laws and things. There's a lot of hatred, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of hurt feelings, there's a lot of people disconnecting from one another. Like, I've unfollowed pastors, because I've been like, these people, some of them are just out of control. I've blocked from seeing certain people's posts, even though maybe when I grew up with them they were nice, and then some people now are just like a little problematic online. So I've kind of like stopped tuning into a lot of it. And some of these people, maybe they go to church, maybe they don't. I don't really know. There's like a variety. There's so much variety. As far as but that's, I guess I would say, as far as like cell phones, as far as laptops, I really don't know what is being practiced or preached, because I feel like people are chronically online. I say that because I'm online, and maybe even if it's the Sabbath and I'm online, and other people are also online, even when it's like during church time. So I'm kind of like, and some people I'm like, well, I know you're at church, like, why are you on Instagram? You know, it's like, I'm not, I'm not really, I don't really care. But that's kind of how I kind of recognize that, that people don't seem to really disconnect too much. There is more of a push for people to try to disconnect more often, but it's kind of gone too far for too long, I would say. I don't know where the conversations are going about internet addiction and about all the kind of like brain related challenges, dopamine depletion, overstimulation. I don't really know where the health message is going with those. Like, I did see a big increase in people talking about mental health, like especially near the pandemic and stuff. People started getting more involved and open-minded about mental health because the church itself does promote health. And then I started hearing more people talking about mental health, but with technology, I'm not sure how people are talking about mental health lately. I'm pretty sure it's coming up, but I don't really know the details. I read I think in 2025, I read one of those Adventist magazines that they mail to you. My folks, I think my dad gets them, and I read them on occasion. I'll flip through and see the topics. One of them was about one of the topics was about I guess the evolution of sharing services. Or conferences or meetings. There was an article about kind of how people used to use pamphlets, and then there was one person that at one point got like an email list going, and then somebody started like streaming some conferences or like having them available for people who paid to log in or something, or having them available streamed. It was kind of just talking about, I guess, conferences or churches, I think, of certain types of meetings that were kind of bigger meetings that people would like want to be a part of or go to, like where people used to go in person to the conferences, and then kind of how it became available online. So it kind of talked about the history of that. I don't really know if they do conferences anymore. Those kind of like meetings, camp meeting. I don't know. There's just so much I just don't know that I'm curious about, but I'm like, I also try to protect my own peace, and part of me doesn't really want to like get too involved, which is sad to say. Like, I do value a lot of the traditions, but there is kind of an unhealthy aspect as well, just depending like what you're exposed to or who you're exposed to. It can be a little intense. So I'm not always trying to spend my free time really like diving into stuff with all the groups and stuff. Most of the people I know and talk to that go to church, or maybe that are pastors, the people I actually interact with regularly, I don't think I have an issue with them. Amongst the Adventists, I don't really have an issue with them, but there are a lot of people I grew up with that, I mean, if I don't even know how big my network spans. One thing I do notice is, unfortunately, there have been a lot of deaths. I think I've counted maybe about 7 deaths in the last like 3 or 4 years. Um, 5 of which were quite recent, like 2026 and 2025. So there's a lot of people who are maybe my parents' age that I grew up with. I don't really want to talk too much more about that, but there's a lot of people. It feels like every couple months I get a notice that someone else has passed away. I don't know why or what. I don't think any of these people were even 80. A lot of them were in their 60s and 70s. I don't know how long the complications have gone on, but I'm just mentioning it in a way that, with networking, like there's so many people that I don't even really talk to anymore too much, to where I'm like, I don't really know how to even deal with that. Like when someone passes away and I'm like, I spent so much of my life with this person, maybe we don't talk right now, but it's like, how to even reach out to people is kind of like I don't know, because I don't want to like rekindle something that I'm not trying to rekindle, but I also don't want people to think I don't care, but I also don't want to like get overly involved with people that I don't really know what they're like now. Yeah, does that make sense? I mean, I try to protect my energy when it comes to the church. I kind of just still try to, like, I'm not like that distant to a point where I'm just like, I'm not hateful toward anybody really, not that I think, but I'm also not like super open to like welcoming people into my life. Like I don't really want to catch up with people that I don't talk to regularly. If they don't want to hang out, I don't really want to talk to them. I know that sounds maybe mean, but it's like, if somebody doesn't want to like talk by the phone and get in touch, or if somebody doesn't want to, grab dinner or grab lunch or grab coffee or something, I don't really think I really want to like open up a door that I don't know where it's gonna lead. I'm still kind of cautious about that because I don't know, people have gone through a lot in the last multiple years, and some people are kind of just unwell, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but I don't want anybody adding to my life more problems, more stress. Like I just don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel at all. But I don't feel that I don't know. I don't feel that like I'm not like holding a grudge, but I don't know. There's a lot that I just don't know what to do, or how to approach things, or who to approach, or who to talk to, or what's the protocol. Like I just, I do care for a lot of the people I grew up with, people my age, people I grew up around, people's parents, that we'd have sleepovers, or they were like the collegiate pastor or the youth pastor, or they would have Bible studies and invite us to their homes, or hold vespers, or they would lead praise, well, I think we led our own praise teams, but in college, but yeah, they would like be available for us, and they were a big part of my social life. And I still value and respect a lot of the people, the people my age, the people who are, the parents of those friends. If anybody wants to like hang out, I'm willing to get to know people who want to actually interact. But if it's just like a one-time call, and then, I know how it goes, like social order of things. You call for one reason, or you send a message for one reason, and then people ask you how you're doing or what you're doing, and then they kind of want to know where you're working, where you're living, what you're doing, who you're dating. Like, they want to get all like involved in your life in a way. And I'm kind of like, if you don't know those things about me, you kind of don't know me at all. And I don't really want to be talking to everybody about things if that's the only thing we're going to talk about, and then we're never going to talk again. So it's kind of like weird. I'm in a weird place with a lot of like being back in the city, and being a little more likely to kind of come across church related people. But it is kind of, I don't know, when it comes, I guess I'm not really talking about that, but I mean media, social media kind of like gets us in touch. The phones, usually Facebook, WhatsApp, texting, maybe even Instagram at times. Like, there are people on a lot of these apps. I think most of the people I know are on all of these apps, and I still have a lot of people's phone numbers to where I'm just like in communication, not with all of them, but it's just like a dial away or a message away. I could reach out to people, and it's not just because of like deaths and things, but like it could be anybody. I could just reach out. Like, I had a friend who was mentioning something on Facebook about their challenge with like getting laid off or something like that. I didn't know they weren't in LA, so I reached out, and I was kind of like, hey, if you want to grab coffee. And then they weren't even like here, so I was like, oh, you're like in a whole different state. Like, I didn't even know where they were. But there are people that I've reached, that I've reconnected with since I've been back in LA. But the network is so wide that I don't think I would possibly have the time or money or energy to really reconnect with everybody. One convenient thing about going to church is that if everybody went to church, you could see everybody at the same time. But I don't think regularly meeting up with everybody that I know, or even all the people I'd want to meet up with regularly, is very likely, because I have friends that aren't even part of the church that I still like to keep in touch with, and I talk to regularly. Like, I just wouldn't have time for everybody. But I don't know. Like, the people who want to hang out, I try to be available to hang out, and then the people who don't seem to reach me, I kind of don't go too much out of my way to reach them. Maybe a little bit sometimes, but not really. So, I don't know. Adventists have their own magazines. There's a Recorder. I can't remember the name of the other magazine, but there was one that the last issue already came out for 2026, and it's over now, but it had been going for like a really long time. Like I said, you can get a lot of the materials for free online. You don't really have to like buy a lot of stuff. Most of the material is going to be Ellen G. White stuff, Um, there's a part of me that still likes it. I don't know what it is about the stuff that she wrote. Like, I'm not saying every sentence I enjoy. Some of it sounds very, like, critical, but, like, criticizing almost, or, like, aggressive. But there's a lot of, like, the food for thought kind of lifestyle related topics. Like, if you're really into, like, lifestyle related things, like in Sabbath.school, I've been reading the one about prayer for a long time. It was the Ellen G. White writings portions. I didn't really read the actual Sabbath school lessons. I haven't even finished the Ellen G. White stuff though, but I kind of like some of it. I skip because I'm like, oh gosh, it's starting to sound a little like weird. But and I just read what I feel like. I think that was like 2 weeks ago. This week the topic I think was about faith. I don't know what next week the topic's gonna be. I didn't really want to read the faith one, and I didn't even finish reading the prayer one. I was enjoying reading the prayer one, so I'm still kind of reading that on occasion when I feel like it. Usually the lessons are one lesson per day. But there's a lot of types of readings and devotionals and books and stuff that get written that were written. I don't think there's any new stuff because she's not living anymore, but they're from like the mid 1800s, so it's like a weird read, but there is something very poetic about it, and it's like interesting. Like, I kind of like some of the ideas. I think my favorite books, I still like Steps to Christ. That book is mostly about prayer. And this book, The Adventist Home, I still kind of like that book a lot. Even though they're not, I think a lot of people would find them very boring. But I like boring sometimes. I like reading stuff that's just like old sounding and just ideas that are like so strange to try to even like think about. Like there's a section in there about courtship and like dating and stuff, and like how that should even look, and it just sounds so foreign. Like, it's just like topics that are just like, I don't think I've ever met a person who's this way. Like, or a household that's a certain way. There's stuff about finances, about, the family being a sacred circle of trust, and like all this kind of stuff that I'm just kind of like, a lot of it's like idealistic, like, or like not living in the cities and living more in the countryside for health, for cleaner air, for peace of mind, for slower pace of living. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's like interesting to read about and just like visually just kind of think about, like, wow, it's kind of like nice mindset wise. I'm not saying I believe every word of it, or that I need to think somebody's a prophet, or I don't know. That doesn't concern me. I like the way it makes me feel. I read the parts that make me feel pleasant, and then the stuff that feels a little like harsh, I'm kind of like, I don't need to read this. Like, if they start talking about the eternal hellfire or whatever, I'm like, alright, we can skip a couple pages of that. But I like the stuff that's kind of more uplifting. There's a lot of magazines and stuff though that don't exist. In this recent episode of Recorder, it's called Pacific Union Recorder, from May 2026. There's a film festival called Sunscreen Film Festival Sun as in SON, like son, daughter. Um, Sunscreen Film Festival. It says this short documentary follows La Sierra students. La Sierra is a university, and I think it's an area. La Sierra students serving communities, deepening their faith, and discovering purpose through service. And I think it's called Stewards of the Earth, and it has like a picture of a big like greenhouse. It looks like a greenhouse or something like that. It says directed by Ezekiel Canaan. Ezekiel spelled the regular way, and Canaan like the area of Canaan, Canaan. I don't know where you can get these magazines from, but I was wanting to see that movie. It says watch now on YouTube, and you can scan the QR code. And it has the link here, but it's in very small print. So https // it's YouTube, but youtu.be/h uppercase P, the number 3, uppercase D, uppercase Q, lowercase m, lowercase p, uppercase W, the number 8, lowercase f, and lowercase s. Then there's a QR code to scan. I was wanting to watch this movie though. But this book has a bunch of stuff from like different areas. Usually I read the part about Holbrook Indian School. I think it's a school from like the 1940s. It was a residential school, but the Adventists still have a residential school. I don't know if that is a proud part of history, but page 32, I've been to that school, I've seen it. The kids I met, a lot of them were traumatized, not necessarily by the school itself, from what I heard, but from the communities. I think, okay, so I don't know how good of a representation the kids of that school are for the areas like Holbrook and Chinle. But the way it seemed was that some of the kids we talked to, their home lives weren't that great, and the school was a place where they could live and stay. I think kids stayed there from ages 5 to like 18. There was school, I think, from about those ages up to like senior in high school, and people could learn like a trade, like working with horses, becoming a mechanic. There were certain trades people could like learn so that they could even like get jobs out of high school. And then there were some people that had a rough home life, and the school, I guess there are people who donate money so kids could have a dormitory life there. Some kids didn't go home on spring breaks or holiday breaks, but they got meals, they got dorm. Of course, they had to do the whole religious stuff, church, all that. Some of them weren't believers, and that's fine, you know. But the school is Adventist run, and it's not brand new. The topics in the magazine, there's a lot of topics. Fundamental belief, the second coming of Christ, Adventist pioneers in the West, something about Moses' mother, something about creation. Then there's all these different conferences. There's Arizona Conference, Central California Conference, Hawaii Conference, Holbrook Indian School, Adventist Health, La Sierra University, Loma Linda University, Pacific Union College, Nevada Utah Conference, Northern California Conference, Southeastern California Conference, Southern California Conference, Community and Marketplace, Sunset Calendars, and we do not lose heart. So that's the table of contents, and there's all those topics in this magazine for this month, and people can kind of like read through to see what's going on in different areas. And it mentioned all the sunset times for sunset for Sabbath. So that's on page 56. It has the May 2026 sunset calendar and the June 2026 sunset calendar, and then it has city locations in alphabetical order from Alturas, Shasta, Angwin, Bakerfield, Calexico, Chico, all the way down to San Jose, Santa Rosa, Sunset Beach, Thousand Oaks, Tucson, and you could cut them out. And it has all the weeks: May 1, May 8, May 15, May 22, May 29. So if I look at mine for Los Angeles and I go over to May 22, it says 7:52. That's 7:52 p.m. And I know that's correct because I already checked my the app before I even knew that was in there. But yeah, I mean, if you're into kind of just reading random stuff, I mean, they do have a lot of literature that you can read that's not necessarily just like Bible and church stuff. Like they have like community service and volunteer work and health related types of news related to different church groups and regions. So that's kind of cool. I don't know if it's really cool. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's, you know, slower and interesting. But a lot of the stuff is online too. And yeah, like a lot of it's just interesting though. Like there's a lot that I still don't really know, but yeah, that's all I really had to all almost like 90 minutes worth of what I had to really say about the topic, like, you know, lifestyle wise and choices people make as far as like what they want to do with their time and energy and freedom and work and school and stuff like that. Like I'd say Adventist overall, lifestyle wise, it's pretty conformed to like mainstream America or mainstream areas where people live, but especially mainstream Christianity, but there's still the differences. And then yeah, when it comes to the Sabbath, a lot of times people have some type of a discipline to where they're kind of disconnected from some type of secular stuff. So there's usually it's like no buying, no selling. So a lot of people don't work on the Sabbath times. A lot of people don't buy things. I've seen that change too, with churches going out to like restaurants and stuff. A lot of people don't sell things, meaning they don't work or make money. And a lot of people, some people don't cook. Like they cook in advance, they meal prep, or make it so something's like in a crock pot. So people really prepare for the Sabbath so that they're really not working. I don't really know anybody who, like, there's not really a tradition in Adventism to not drive. I don't know the stance on buying gas if you're running out of gas. And I think some of those traditions about like buying food or watching TV or watching internet shows and stuff, a lot of that is changed. Like, people watch movies, people watch shows. Maybe it's only religious stuff. A lot of people might tune into church online or watch extra churches. If you go to one church, there's still other services. You might watch a different one or hang out and have potlucks with friends or go to the beach or go hike or something like that. Like, there is like a lot of outdoors tradition. Not really playing sports outdoors, competitive sports necessarily. I don't really know the stance on going to the gym. That wasn't really like a topic in my day. Pretty much like going to the gym as a Sabbath activity, but exercise and healthy eating was definitely often always kind of recommended. But yeah, once it comes to like all the like internet and stuff, that's kind of how it looks. I would say there's the strict versus not strict. I'd say the stricter people probably aren't really on their phone apps too much, and especially during church, they're probably not on their phones or tablets. But I've seen a lot of people bring their phones as a Bible, with the Bible apps in there. I've seen pastors use the phones and tablets. I've seen most churches have kind of gone more towards PowerPoint slide presentations and prepared PowerPoints and maybe queuing up like a YouTube video that might be relevant and adding more like multimedia to the services. With the songs, the songs are often on like the screen, so there is like a PowerPoint, or they'll maybe play it on a YouTube video and like not put the sound on or something, but it might be like a lyric video or like karaoke style. But yeah, technology is definitely in a lot of churches, and I don't know what people think about it. I don't really know enough people that are like ultra conservative to a point that I've heard people complaining, but I'm sure there probably are people complaining. Because there were already people complaining about like the drums and the electric guitars and clapping, like when I was, going. So I can just imagine now. But yeah, I don't know. Like there's a lot of interesting traditions. I don't really think it's I don't know. Like, it is kind of different. I would say, I mean, I'm not gonna do whole entire deep comparison to like Amish or Mennonites and stuff, but I would say, it is pretty mainstream in appearance. The Sabbath is kind of the one thing that kind of stands out a lot of times, and then like the food choices, a lot of the stuff with media choices and apps and stuff like that. People, you might not notice that about somebody unless you're getting to know them and they're strict Adventist, and then they tell you they don't really like, order stuff on Amazon on the Sabbath or something, or don't order DoorDash on the Sabbath or something. I don't know, but I don't even know though. I don't know if people do or not, because when I was going, that wasn't really like a thing. Like, for people to order or not order, like people were talking about going to stores and stuff. But usually when you were buying something, you weren't at home buying stuff. You were usually out buying stuff. You weren't home buying something online from a company that's just doing whatever it's doing. You probably weren't going into stores buying stuff unless it was like food or gas. That was common for people to buy food and gas. It wasn't very common for people to buy anything else too much. Or going out to restaurants back then, or definitely not going to like sports games and entertainment, like live entertainment, stuff like that on the Sabbath. Like, people wouldn't be doing that. You might watch it at home. I remember I had friends that wanted to come over because our house didn't really have a lot of rules about the Sabbath and stuff. We were still respectful, but we could still like watch stuff, and like my parents didn't really care. Um, Napping is a big one. A lot of people come home and they might nap. They might eat like a big meal after church, and then just everybody just kind of veges out for the afternoon, and then wakes up closer to sundown, and maybe eats dinner, eats like a light meal before or after sundown, depending on the time, and then maybe it's as a group. Like I knew people who would like end the Sabbath. They would bring in the Sabbath together as a family and pray, and then they would end the Sabbath maybe with like a song and a prayer. But then there are people who just do their own thing, and they just, they might just, okay, it's sundown, then like they just turn the TV on and start watching the Lakers game or whatever, like immediately, right, like on the dot. Or maybe they'll have part of the day that they don't do the media stuff, and then once they've taken a bit of a break, like maybe after a little nap after lunch or something, maybe they'll watch stuff from that point on. There are people who do AY, like Adventist Youth. Some churches have like, you might go home to eat lunch and then you come back, or you might just be at church and there might be food at church, and then there's another type of service that's like a little less intense, maybe like music. Or maybe you go home and then you come back and there's like another service, and then people play like volleyball after sunset, or like basketball, or play sports and order pizza or something like that. Or maybe like Friday night there's a bonfire, then you go to church the next day on Saturday, then there's a potluck after church, then you go home, come back before sunset, maybe there's like a health lesson, Sabbath is over, and then people go play sports, or maybe there's like a movie night where it's like some kind of wholesome movie. There's like a variety of ways people do weekend stuff. And the Sundays, who knows what people are doing, but Saturday and Friday are kind of, Friday night and like Saturday are kind of like, you could still technically be like involved in church activities most of the time. But yeah, there's a lot to it that's kind of interesting. I don't know, if you just dropped into an Adventist church, you probably wouldn't even notice the difference, other than the different days of church and people saying Sabbath, or greeting people saying Happy Sabbath. A lot of the songs might be the same. A lot of the hymns might be the same, the doxology, stuff like that. Adventist churches don't really tend to have communion every week, but some have it often. Ours, we did it every 13th Sabbath, because that was like the quarter was every 13th Sabbath. But some churches do it like every week. There's no wine. I've never been to a church where they had wine for communion. It was always grape juice, and then like some kind of unleavened bread, either the one that they make, or like, I don't know, wheat thins or something. I don't know, like some kind of cracker, and then it would be like blessed, and then you'd basically have it as part of the service. There might be foot washing. That's something that some churches do, but not all of them do that as part of the communion service. But yeah, if you just went into a church service, you probably wouldn't notice that much different. That might be the only major difference, like the difference, like talking about Sabbath, talking about sundown, talking about maybe some of the dietary traditions, or talking about Ellen G. White. people at other churches, other religions don't really talk about her at all, um, or consider her a prophet, or like read her writings and stuff. But there really wouldn't be that much that's like way different. Like they might talk about the mission, which is like there's like a mission presentation at every church, I think, every week about like some group is in some country doing something beneficial, like they're building a well in Tanzania or something. I don't know. And then they have like people talking about, oh, we met these kids in the community and we're helping these people, and these different people are getting healthier, and we're bringing like medicines and things to like different groups who need them. And then they always want to talk about who's converting to come to church and getting baptized and stuff like that. If there's a baptism, it's going to be in water, like fully in water, either a baptismal tank in the church or some kind of version of being fully immersed in water. Even if that's outdoors at the beach, it's going to be in the water all the way. There's no icons, there's no crossing yourself, there's no kneeling at the front of the church or bowing at icons or kissing icons. There's no icons anywhere. There might be pictures or banners, but they're not revered or anything like that. There's no Latin. There might be a song that's like in Latin or something, but there's no tradition of Latin use of the Latin language. I've never heard any songs that were in Latin, but you know, there might be a song that's like in Latin. Some churches are in different languages, like Japanese, Spanish, Serbian or Croatian, Tongan. There's like a variety of languages. Multicultural Filipino, Tagalog, I guess. I don't know what the other Filipino languages are called though. Korean. Just various languages. But yeah, I don't think there would be that much major like if you came to a church where the sermon was about Ellen G. White, they had communion with foot washing, no wine, some kind of grape juice. I don't know, maybe it's Easter and they're waving palm fronds, singing Hosanna, like, and it would be a Saturday service, it wouldn't be a Sunday Easter service, or maybe a Friday night. If you had a service where all that was happening at the same time, and people wishing each other happy Sabbath, and yeah, they're teaching the mission, like showing the mission video of what is the mission for that week. There's tithing, and if there was a baptism, if all that was going on in the same week, you'd be like foot washing. That would be maybe a church service that looked different from all the others a little bit, but that's about as different as it's probably gonna get. And the church would be on Saturday, so yeah, that's kind of what it would look like. Kind of the variety of how people approach lifestyle and technology and Adventism.